Paul Cousineau from Sound of Prana, sharing about how to make an effective presentation as well as communicating so that you can achieve the desired goal of your communication. So the essence of this video is to share about keeping your presentation very focused and having that central point that you want to communicate to your audience. Why is that important? Because people can only remember a certain number of things at any given moment, especially when it's a presentation. If you're teaching about a subject, they say leave it to 1 to 3 key items, key teachings, and then really focus your presentation around that. And I have a good example of it where I was doing a webinar training and I did it on online format and I did it live as well. And the first time that I did the presentation, I had all of these details, all these complexities, because I thought they were really important for people to benefit the most and to receive maximum value from our time together. But really, the feedback was people loved it, but they found there was too much details and it was hard for them to stay on board the entire presentation. So what happens is that they eventually become confused. They remember things that might not be critical, and then they don't remember some of the essential components. So I delivered the same presentation and I removed 50% of the content. And then people loved it. The reactions were fantastic. So I knew I was onto something. I presented it again and I removed 50% of the content. And then people loved it, and there was still comments from people that told me they found there was too much information in it and that I should condense it, make it shorter, provide more examples. And I like that aspect because when you provide examples, you start engaging. You're talking with people. Now I'm giving you this example of this webinar and this series, right? So you can start understanding how I went through this process of removing the content. So then I used all that information to make the presentation 60% of the content removed. So that means I'm maybe about 7 to 10% of the initial content. And this was one of the best deliveries I had. And I kept my crowd very engaged because the message was simple and it was easy for them to remember those 3 key steps of the hero's journey or the entrepreneurial journey as a result of that. And then I did another presentation this weekend, and how I did it was to focus on 3 main concepts, and then I presented them in the introduction, and I went kind of over each one of them and what that meant, and I gave examples. Then during the core piece of my presentation, I decided to go in much more detail about the component 1, but I reused most of the content from the introduction and then added more examples and a little bit more details. But I still kept the central focus of that point. Then I did the same thing for the second one and the third one, and guess what I did in the conclusion? I went through those 3 elements. And everyone loved the presentation, and there was so much interaction afterwards. People came and asked me specialized questions. There was all this engagement, this energy going on. So really, if you want to have effective communications, and particularly in the context of presentation, focus your content on the primary teaching you want people to remember and to receive, and then don't put as much detail around it. Remove all of that extra fluff and really keep your focus on that central point. If you enjoyed this video, I invite you to check out the soundofprana.ca website, and there's a video blog there, as well as other useful resources to help you navigate these periods of change and have success in your entrepreneurial projects.